Hello, dear friends. Live from Topanga. Today, I present you Siddhanta Probhu, a devotee who made his life purpose collecting of precious memories of Srila Prabhupada that was done by devotees and people who met him in real life, real stories and real encounters. Siddhanta Probhu. Siddhanta Probhu.
Hare Krishna.
Before we begin, I wanted to ask you, how is your own path to Krishna consciousness begun? What attracted you the most in this moment?
Well, what attracted me most was Prabhupada's writings. I had been searching for knowledge about the Absolute Truth. As it's explained in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says there's 4 types of people that come to him.
Right.
Ones who are distressed, in need of money, inquisitive, and in search of knowledge. So I think I had a combination of all those.
Good.
So mostly in searching.
Mm-hmm.
My father, who was an atheist, couldn't provide any answers. In college, I took philosophy courses that weren't very satisfying or gratifying.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't give me real heartfelt knowledge that that professor could teach.
Right, right. And how did you hear about the Krishna?
Well, I first saw the devotees in Hollywood
Mm-hmm.
after I graduated college. And I saw them chanting on the streets. And it's very weird.
Of course.
With
First time
the
impression.
robes, bald heads, everything, shaved heads. And I actually complained to a policeman of San Luis, I said, what are those guys doing here?
Really?
I said, and there's actually a picture, a painting in the original Bhagavad Gita that describes and shows the 4 demoniac people that hoard money, people that slaughter animals, people that are into illicit sex, which means sex outside of marriage, rapes and things like that. And there's one picture in that same, one image in that same one picture that describes all these personalities. And off in the background you'll see there's a image of Harinam, devotees dressed in dhotis, kurtas, and they're on Harinam. And there's one person, a demonic person, more towards the foreground of that painting, who's pointing and deriding them. And when I saw that, that was me.
God.
That was me. So, just the fact that I'm still here gives proof that there is possibility for anyone to change their heart.
Right.
And so it came through reading Prabhupada's Back to Godhead magazine.
So first you read that. Uh-huh.
About a year later, I was in Dallas, Texas, and as a film editor. I was employed.
You were in the film industry?
Yeah. In Dallas, I got my first job in the industry as an editor. But on Sundays, my wife and I, we were out at the park enjoying life, and the devotees were there. And one brahmachari came up and handed me a BTG, Back to Godhead magazine. And she and I were both searching. We had done macrobiotics and Nishin Shosha Buddhism and Christianity and Judaism. We were raised with that, which wasn't that gratifying or satisfying. But I went home and read that first article written by Prabhupada, and it answered all the questions I ever had, and more.
Mm-hmm.
I said, okay, this person,
I want to meet you.
this is the real deal.
Uh-huh.
So,
So you met Srila Prabhupada?
Yeah,
Was
there
it by
and
accident or you were
no, planned.
chasing him?
Yeah, after reading that, I realized that he was a guru.
You want to meet him?
He's a teacher. And we went to the temple there, and it was a kind of a strange thing. The temple president at that time in Dallas was the same devotee who was leading the Harinam party I saw a year before in Hollywood.
What a coincidence.
Yeah, nothing happens by chance.
Exactly. Seed was planted.
Yeah, Krishna put him there. But he was very devoted, very sincere guy. And while there in Dallas, I filmed my first Krishna conscious documentary, which was a double wedding. Two couples were getting married, and I was film editor, so I rented a camera and filmed their wedding and recorded it. It's on YouTube. You can check it out.
Okay.
But while in Dallas, Prabhupada was scheduled to come, and I drove to the airport, met him there, and drove back to the temple it was a Sunday, and he gave a lecture, Sunday feast lecture on the benefit of chanting Hare Krishna. And sitting on his Vyasasana after the lecture, they asked for questions from the audience. And a gentleman who was, not a gentleman, he was a kid, young man, raised his hand and he said, kind of arrogantly said, "What do you feel?" Pointing right at Prabhupada. And said, "What do you feel when you chant Hare Krishna?" And Prabhupada, in a heartbeat, without hesitation, sat back on the Vyasasana and said, "I feel no fear." And it was spoken with such conviction and without hesitation, when it wasn't on the mental platform, that I knew that it was coming from reality, that he and Krishna were like this.
Right.
And to me, at that time, it was 1971, and that was the heart of the Vietnam War. I was at the age where I could be conscripted, called up to serve in a war that I didn't believe in. Besides the fear of dying, getting shot. No one wants to die like that. And but when I heard those words, and I realized that was the answer to that particular fear that I had about dying in a war.
So the first impression of Srila Prabhupada, that was someone who's...
Yeah, speaks from the heart, and he was connected to the Supreme Lord. Right. That this was a person that was not speculating. He was not, didn't have time to, he didn't take time to think, oh, well, let me see, what do I feel? It was like the absolute truth.
Right.
And this was the first person that I had met that I could feel he was not out to exploit me. He was here out of kindness to present the absolute truth to whoever would listen and take his advice.
So at that moment you decided to start taking collecting memories of others?
No.
Precious moments that needs to be
No,
shared?
I didn't start that till 20 years later.
Oh, okay.
In 1991. But I still had stayed on as a film editor in that production company. Finally surrendered fully, became Prabhupada's disciple in 1974. We had moved to Denver, Colorado. And I was, again, a film editor at an ABC affiliate in Denver. But we had gone to the temple there, etc. So it was like the right time in my life, though, to quit the material engagement and become a full-time devotee. And while in the temple there in Denver, I became a Bhakti leader, Sankirtan leader. I gave lectures at colleges and high schools.
How was the atmosphere at this time?
What's that?
How was the atmosphere at this time? I assume.
Oh, in the United States?
Yeah, like when you were preaching, when you were telling the words of wisdom, how it was received.
Well, like any time, those who are ready to hear, inquisitive, will, soak up the philosophy, and if it's presented in a nice way, where you're not speaking down to somebody, speaking from personal experience, then it hits their heart. And they're hearing something that they need to hear, that rings true for them, like what I heard from Prabhupada. So it's the same philosophy that we should learn how to preach nicely or explain this philosophy nicely, that somebody else can benefit from it. And that's why Prabhupada was here, came to the West. And it took him 30 years after his spiritual master instructed him to, if he ever got money, to print books and to preach in the West. So it took me about 71, well, it was only a few years before I became a devotee. But after doing temple activities in Denver, I I received a phone call from a devotee named Srila, whose house we're in today. And he started up a project of it's called ISKCON Television. And he heard from Yadubar, who's also a filmmaker, that I was an editor, a professional editor, meaning I got paid for it. So he called me up and said, hey, we're starting this project. We want to create Krishna conscious videos. And I said, okay, I'm there. So I drove from Denver to LA, and we started the project, creating many types of Krishna conscious videos, the Acharya series, a documentary called Healthy, Wealthy, and Wise, which is a vegetarian documentary, 1984, that was made. We made a reincarnation documentary, I think maybe 1986, that's still out there. We produced the Acharya series, which is a 5-part series on the life of Prabhupada. Hindi movies that we subtitled into English. We produced 10 or 12 Krishna conscious puppet shows.
What?
Taken from the Bhagavatam.
Oh my God.
And they're great for kids.
They're on YouTube?
YouTube,
Find them on YouTube?
yeah, you go to Krishna YouTube, I think it is.
For kids?
For kids. But they're great for adults.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm the narrator.
Oh.
But the devotee and his wife, they wrote the scripts. Prahlad Maharaj, 10 or 12 different wonderful stories that are inspiring, entertaining, great. I selected the music, and I have to say that I selected the right music for it all. So that was fun to do.
Did any people from India watched it? How was their reaction to that? Because
well, I didn't have much contact with people from India during those times.
Interesting to see how they see the reflection, because it's pretty much a lot of Indian culture in that, right? In Bhagavad Gita, and to see reflection, how they react to our view.
Well, I think they reacted positively because there's more Indian devotees now in the movement than there are American or English-speaking devotees. So
let's go back to your idea to create this documentary of memories of Srila Prabhupada. So I assume after his passing, and you decided.
Right. I had been partnered with Nisringananda from 1978, and then we parted ways in 1991. So for 13 years we produced all these videos.
How many videos did you make?
How many videos?
How many devotees gave you interview?
No, I'm speaking about in 1991, we legally divorced from our partnership. And at that time I decided, well, I need some seva, some service.
Right.
So having interviewed, while we were still partners, a devotee named Shruti Kirti, who was Prabhupada's servant for a couple of years, I realized he had some stories that were inspiring to me, enlivening to me, stories I'd never heard, hadn't heard them from the Bhagavatam or the Bhagavad Gita. These are extra stories that it's coming from a first-hand experience of someone who was there, an eyewitness to Prabhupada and his teachings, instructions that Prabhupada gave him, the qualities that Prabhupada exhibited while Shruti Kirti was in his service. And because I felt from my heart entertainment, enlivenment, I said, well, this is what I'm going to do after I divorce from Nisringananda. So it was from that point that for 32 years now, I produced these.
32 years you make those videos.
Yeah.
So how many videos did you make so far?
Right now I've made 96 videos,
96.
totaling about 150 hours of oral histories, first-hand experience being with Prabhupada. Between 400 and 500 devotees I've interviewed all around the world. I've traveled to India to collect these memories, Fiji, France, UK, Australia.
So it is a project of your lifetime.
Yeah, it's taken time to go to these places. New York, San Francisco, Alachua, Los Angeles, of course. I said India.
97 interviews so far.
96.
96.
Right.
Okay.
And I've totaled it up, and so it's about 150 hours. So if one was to watch only a half hour every day, it would take 10 months to watch everything.
Oh my God. But I think it's worth it. So let's go back to those interviews. What is the most common description of Srila Prabhupada that you hear when you were interviewing devotees?
Well, the quality, I've also, for this last year of 2022, just the previous year, I was asked by the GBC, or it's called SPT, the Strategic Planning Team, to have a podcast where every Ekadashi, every 2 weeks, I would be interviewed by a devotee named Pancharatna Prabhu, who lives in Mayapur and New York half the year. And they wanted me to take selections from the memory series that describe a quality of Prabhupada. Wow. And that's what we're going to talk about today here at this gathering tonight. That there's 26 qualities of a Vaishnav. And it's described in the Bhagavatam. He's merciful, he's expert, he's peaceful, he does not create any enemies, he's a friend to everyone. There's a list in 5.18.12.
I assume this list was made after Srila Prabhupada. This is very high standard. Let's put it this way. Is it achievable?
Yes. So this so Prabhupada said in a interview when he was in Gainesville, Florida, he was being interviewed by a radio announcer, a host, and Prabhupada was talking about a Vaishnav, and this radio announcer said, "Well, how would I recognize a Vaishnav if I met one?" And Prabhupada said he would be a perfect gentleman.
Or perfect lady.
Exactly. Yeah. There's no distinction, bodies. And so every Ekadashi, we had a podcast essentially, and you can also find it on YouTube. When you go to Prabhupada Memories, that's my YouTube channel. And there you'll see 90 plus of my videos, plus all the 26 podcasts that I did, each Ekadashi focusing on one of the 26 qualities of a Vaishnava, a perfect gentleman. So, with that, I forgot what your question was. But
what was the most common description?
Oh, now I know where I was going. So every interview that I give with someone, I always end up by asking, what quality impressed you the most about Prabhupada? And 80% of the time, the devotee responds with the answer of, he is compassionate or merciful. So that's the quality that stands out. So that's the quality that we're going to focus on tonight.
That's fantastic. That's a really good quality.
Yeah.
Is there any the most inspiring videos that you were taking and that inspired you personally? Is there any videos that changed your life?
No. I mean, I've already surrendered in a sense to a degree. But I mean, I'm doing some seva, and it's not really me, But there's so many. I have over these 32 years, I've created a number of top 10 videos. I've got about 6 or 7 top 10 as I create a number of them. Then I'll
tell us at least one of the stories.
One top 10.
Yeah, one of those, and the rest you can watch on YouTube.
Well, one comes to mind is from Siddhanta Probhu, who wrote the books Chasing Rhinos with the Swami. You've heard of this book? Siddhanta was a very early disciple. And he had the idea to go to England to preach to the Beatles. He wanted to make the Beatles aware of Krishna. Yeah, he wanted to make them devotees. And sure enough, that's another story, but George Harrison was attracted to Shama Sundar and the message that they were preaching. he was up beforehand into spiritual life. They had all gone to India, so they were searching, but mostly George Harrison was the one who was searching the most. So Krishna somehow or another got them in touch. Shamashundra became friends with George Harrison. And Shamashundra asked Prabhupada, how should we preach to them? And Prabhupada said, just give them everything. Just give them prasadam. Just give them lessons from the Gita. Just give them knowledge. Don't ask for money. Although the devotees were poor, it was the beginning of the movement, essentially. But it came after a few years that Prabhupada had written the Krishna book. And it had been like several months that Prabhupada had written the Krishna book, but they didn't have the money in the BBT, the publishing arm of Prabhupada's movement, to print the book. It took $19,000, and at that time, it was a lot of money. So Prabhupada asked Shamashundra to come into his room, and he told Shamashundra, I want you to ask George for the money to print the Krishna book. Mm-hmm. And Shamashundra said, oh no, Prabhupada, I don't think that's a good idea. You've always told us just to give. Mm-hmm. Give them, don't ask anything. Otherwise they'll think that we're just like some other group that wants to, that's after some material thing from them, just to getting some money from them. And Prabhupada said, don't worry, Krishna will help you. And with that, he dismissed Shamashundra, and Shamashundra, he thought to himself, I've just been given the order by the guru, my spiritual master, the acharya, that I've got to go out and ask George Harrison for some money that I don't want to do. Mm-hmm. So couple of weeks later, George and Shamashundra and a man named David Wynne, who was the sculptor laureate for England, he created the bust of Queen Elizabeth, and he was a professional and just a brilliant artist. So the three of them had gone out that day to search for some marble, to buy some marble that George purchased for the temple, for the altar at the manor, or one of the temples there in London. And it was costly, when you buy marble, and back in those days anyways, 5,000 pounds you can weight of the marble, that's a considerable amount of money. So now on top of that, Shamasundra's thinking, okay, how am I going to ask George for more money? So they were all having dinner at David Wynne's house later that evening, and after dinner it was dark, and so Shamashundra got George Harrison off to the side, and he's thinking, he's praying to Krishna, please help me, what am I going to say? So he decided in his mind that he was going to make Prabhupada the bad guy. So he said to George, George, Srila Prabhupada wanted me to ask you a question, and he explained what the Krishna book was, the pastimes of Krishna, and so many stories, and that it had been already written by Prabhupada 2 or 3 months earlier, but the BBT didn't have the funds to print it, and it cost $19,000 to print this book. And Prabhupada asked me to ask you if you could donate the money to print the book. Now, I don't know if you can see my eyes, but as soon as Shamashundra was saying that it cost $19,000 and he was asking for a donation, after already George on his own donating money to print to buy this marble, his eyes rolled in his head like, oh my God, here's another group that's asking me for money. They just want money from me. Instantaneously, as George went up and rolled his eyes, and he was thinking, Shamashundra could see on his face what he was thinking. It was obvious. Mm-hmm. The body language and his eyes, you could see it. And his face just went grim. Oh no. As soon as George went like that, there was a lightning bolt that struck the house, David Wynne's house. And when lightning strikes, or when lightning strikes, and then you generally count 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, to see how far away the lightning was. Well, the sound of the lightning and the visual of the lightning bolt was simultaneous. In other words, that lightning bolt hit the house. All the lights went out. All the power was lost in the house for 10 at least 10 minutes.
Was that enough for George to understand? Any more rolling of the eyes?
So they didn't say anything for 10 minutes. They were just like this in front of each other. And as soon as the power went back on in the house, George said, "Well, how much did you say it was then?"
Excellent.
So you see, he knew Krishna would send him a message.
Exactly.
So Prabhupada's words that Krishna would help rang true.
Fantastic story. For more stories, visit Siddhanta Probhu YouTube channel and you will see a lot of memories.
Prabhupada Memories. That's the name of the channel. Mm-hmm. And subscribe and like.
Subscribe and then like and comments, please.
Yeah.
Before I let you go, one last question. What would be your advice to our viewers how to stay positive and spiritual in this uncertain time?
How to stay positive what?
Of positive and spiritual in these uncertain times full of suffering, fear, and temptation.
Well, if you say how to avoid fear, I have to repeat what Prabhupada said. Chant the Maha Mantra. When you chant Krishna's name, God's name, God has 1,000 names, so it's not sectarian. If you're Christian, chant Cristo, 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 Yahweh, Allah, Yahweh, Jehovah, Buddha. There's 1,000 names of God. So it's not limited. And there's another story about that too, but that's another time. But
oh, please. If it came to your mind, please share it with us.
Well, Prabhupada was in Iran. And there was the sound that's made like 6 times a day. Maybe a horn or temple bell. Something is sounds where it's called to prayer. Where the Muslims pray, they take out their carpet and they pray. They face the east or whatever. And they pray. And when Prabhupada heard the sound, he asked Aitreya Rishi, what was that sound? And Aitreya Rishi asked Prabhupada, or told Prabhupada, that that's the call to prayer. And he explained they pray to God 6 times a day. And Prabhupada said, oh, that's very good. And then Aitreya Rishi said, but Prabhupada, isn't it better that they chant Hare Krishna? And Prabhupada said, you're trying to make me sectarian?
Yeah, that's a good one.
So, any name.
He had a great sense of humor.
Very, very quick wit.
Yeah.
And a good sense of humor, absolutely. And many examples of that in the memory series. So that's the best way to get rid of fear.
Suffering.
And then the way to stay enlivened is to read Prabhupada's books, so many minutes a day, and then to read or to hear at least 30 minutes of any one of these stories I've recorded. They'll very inspirational.
And what is great?
And it'll increase your faith, guaranteed. And if it doesn't, I'll give you your money back.
Money back guarantee.
From YouTube.
Thank you so much, Siddhanta Probhu. Dear viewers, so you got the idea. Please don't hesitate to follow and subscribe Siddhanta Probhu YouTube channel, Memories of Srila Prabhupada.
Prabhupada Memories.
Prabhupada Memories. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.